Welcome to another edition of Forgotten Treasures. My name is Vince Negro, and with us on today's program is Armando Terra, one of our co-hosts. Welcome to the show, Armando.
Thank you, Vince.
Armando is our resident expert with Gary Manata and Sean the Watchfinder. And on today's program, we want to explore a little bit about Armando, a little bit about his past history and how he really got involved on becoming this expert, as I was talking off camera, from soup to nuts in that whole industry. Armando, how did you collect so many things? And we'll get into details about your collection. How did that, at an early age, something that caught your attention and you saw the vision of just collecting these things?
I was always interested in collecting. The first item I ever collected was a Coke sign from a variety store in the neighborhood that I worked. And
how old were you?
I was 14 at the time. And then I just started to amass my collection, just collecting different pieces, very eclectic collection, different items, broad range of interests, and the collection grew, and it's that size now.
So you had this original Coke sign.
Yes.
And you took it home. And what did your parents say when you brought this Coke sign home? Did they say, "Is this garbage? Get rid of this"? Like, what was the reaction at home?
I explained it to my mother. My mother was pretty excited. My dad didn't really care. I remember I cleaned it and I sort of put some wax on it and I kept it under my bed for the longest time. But I wanted to put it on the wall in my room, but my dad wasn't crazy about that, so I waited a couple of months and then I eventually put it up, and then amongst other things, other signs, and that's how it all started.
So the Coke sign was the start of this your entree into collecting, and then from that, obviously you have a career aside from this. This is not your full-time career. You were in the glass business.
Correct.
But in terms of doing this particular collection. So you had this Coke sign, and then you just started as a youngster, just started to accumulate more things. Were you conscious of when you were out at places getting things?
Yeah, so the Coke sign, the first sign, was a porcelain sign.
Right.
So then I sort of branched off from there, and I started to collect other porcelain signs. And been collecting for like 40 years now, so when I started to collect, there was not many people collecting, like people now, everyone's an expert with Google and everything. So I started to branch off, and then I went into other types of signs, and then eventually into gas and oil. And then I started collecting toys, German wind-ups, Japanese wind-ups. And then it just sort of branched off from there and just kept going and kept growing and growing to the size it is today.
So you pretty much have an eclectic cross-section of everything.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, I've seen your collection, and in our second edition of Loser Life magazine, you were on the cover where we ran a story on you and your collection. We couldn't cover everything in the collection, but the collection had everything, as you said, from signs to even confessionals. I saw you had the Host Chalices. Tell us a little bit about that particular items and how you came about that.
Yeah, I did many years ago, about 20 years ago, I did some work for a church supply house, and they had all these decommissioned tabernacles in the back, and I was amazed that some of them had been stripped for parts and stuff like that. So I talked to the gentleman who was there, and I asked him, I said, "Hey, you want to sell one of these?" He said, "Sure, yeah, they've been all desanctified, you can buy them, it's just they're going for scrap." So, and that's how I got that piece, and then I made that cabinet. I got the crucifix for it, and then the chalice, he gave me the chalice as well with a paten and the ciborium and all those items.
So, growing up, you started to be conscious about, just backtracking to how you started collecting all these things. When did it get to the point when you were living at home that you had a lot of stuff that you knew that this was something you wanted to do more as a hobby, but eventually hold on to these things? A lot of times people collect things, and that's where a lot of people who are going to be watching these shows probably have a lot of things at home and they don't know what they got. And we're going to be talking about that in future shows. When did you know you had something that you really wanted to expand your collection? Was it when you were 15, 20? When did that happen?
Well, like I said, it started at a very early age, and then when I was in my early 20s, I started to realize that these items had value. So I started to catalog them, and I kept watching the markets. Used to go to a lot of antique shows, and the prices were, going up considerably. And And then I started to, keep a keen eye on the pricing, and then just kept amassing and buying at the right time. That's always important, buying at the right time.
And what I saw, it looks like you're a buyer and you're really not much of a seller, because you have what is it? Do you know exactly how many items you have in your
My collection, probably I would estimate probably around 5,000 items.
5,000 items?
5,000 items.
And like I said, the items range from like a bolt to a car. Like you've got motorcycles, you've got cars, you've got the interesting were on the signs was the old Honest Ed signs that, to me, growing up in the downtown Toronto neighborhood, Honest Ed's used to be an institutional place, and you've got quite a few of those signs. And I've noticed that you even had put them up in the garage.
When you collect stuff, the very important part of collecting is displaying the items, knowing how to display them. And my space is limited, so a lot of my items are sort of in close proximity to one another. But those signs were actually made by Wayne Rubin, who was the official sign maker. Mr. Rubin lives out in Scarborough. And
one of the other biggest collections that I saw, you're a big collector of Ford memorabilia. And talk to us a little bit about your Ford memorabilia, because a lot of the things you had were not only car items, they were china. You had a lot of the cups and saucers that came from the original plant, the old Ford. Can you talk a little bit about the Ford memorabilia?
I have a collection of Shenango china, which was made for the Ford Motor Company. A lot of the items were used on the fleet of ships that he had. That's the one with the green script. So there's gravy boats, there's creamers, there's dishes, there's ice cream dishes, cutlery, and then there's the fine china, which was from the executive cafeteria, primarily at the world headquarters in Dearborn, Michigan. And that has silverware, napkins, menus, that sort of thing. And there was also a lot of china used in the actual factories where the people worked. There was a cafeteria, they would go in and then they would serve them on these dishes. Not much of it has survived because now it's sort of, all the stuff they use now is throwaway. So single use. So yeah,
But in that collection, you also had badges that people used to work. When you used to go into the factory, they used to have a badge. Correct. Talk a little bit about the badges, because one of the badge collection you had told me that someone wanted to buy it from you. Tell us a little bit of a story about the badge collection. And was there a book that went with it?
Yeah, there was a book. Yes. Yeah. So there was a gentleman by the name of Jim Crookie who wrote a book. It's employee badges from the Ford Motor Company, passes and stuff like that. And I contributed many photos to that book and helped with a little bit of the writing. And so basically, the Henry Ford, when he got started, he wanted an identification system for each and every one of his employees. So each employee had a unique number. They would wear their badge to work. And then at the end of the week, they would go to the pay office with their badge and receive their pay. Their pay back in the day was in cash money.